Alrighty, like the song says, no rest for the wicked. Money doesn't grow on trees. Uh, second show of the day. Although I'm selling hats, so maybe that's where the money comes from. Anyhow, I am joined today by Tyler Henry, former Winnipeg Blue Bomber. I was kind of looking up your stats. Well, I had to look up something. I can't always have it in here. But originally from Camrose, Alberta, played for the Bombers 2017, 2018. Born in 1993, all that fun stuff. And life is definitely taking you on a journey of sorts, but maybe kind of take us back to your time of coming to the Bombers in 2017 and that team and what you saw and yeah, just kind of your experiences. And I kind of have a few key games in my head, but I'll let you tell the story.
Sure. Yeah. Well, happy to be on your show today. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem.
And yeah, excited to share my story a little bit. Um, you asked me to go back to my playing days. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say you did allude that I was from Camrose. But I'm born and raised small town kid. I actually grew up in a small town called Balf. So for anybody in small town Alberta, they know what I'm talking about, and probably anybody outside of the province has no clue. But that's actually where I really grew up. I went to school in Camrose and had the opportunity to play with the Edmonton Wildcats with the junior program there for 2 years, and then eventually go over to the Golden Bears. I played under Chris Morris for my college career, and so I was really fortunate. I had a great college career, met a lot of great people, um, and was drafted to the Bombers in, I believe it was the 2017 draft. And so, one of those situations for me where I thought I was going to play football until I was probably late 30s, maybe a little older than I currently am now. Come to find out that God had some other plans. Ended up having a couple injury situations unfold on the back end of my playing career, which sort of changed the way I played the game and kind of how my pro career ended up unfolding. But really fortunate, man. Had a couple of years with the Bombers, play with some great dudes, and met some amazing people, obviously from all around the world. Most of these CFL rosters are really from spread out all across America, right? And so, getting a chance to meet a lot of different, unique people before I even moved here myself was a really cool experience as well.
Most definitely, right? And 2017, that had been a few years under the tutelage of Mike O'Shea, and it's hard to believe he's still here. But you like to have consistency. I always say we're the Pittsburgh Steelers of the North, just with coaching and that sort of thing. But what were kind of your first impressions of playing in the CFL? Again, watching it, and then you're actually on that field. And in particular, the atmosphere in Winnipeg and at Princess Auto, well, it was IG Field then.
Yeah, I would say, and even to date, that was, of course, my first real pro experience, and I still stand on it today. That I think that was an organization that it very clearly bred winners, high expectations, with a healthy dose of business. Of course, I mean that's what every pro football organization is, but I think they did a really good job of dosing or balancing between high demands and personability. That's something that I think O'Shea himself was very great at, and it really trickled down throughout the organization. A lot of people who knew how to deal with people, who knew how to handle people. It was like it's like every other organization. It's high demand. Guys are in and out. Your locker mates could change by the day. Everybody understands the situation that you're in a locker room like that, especially a winning team, a team as successful as Winnipeg has been lately. And so, I think the fact that there's still a very personable element to it, a human experience, I'll speak for myself, like a very human experience from the coaching staff. I think that's a really rare breed. And it probably has a lot to do why they're so successful.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you guys are not just, you know, fingers on the board. You again, for stuff I've heard. Again, I'll just use a few names here, but the stuff of Lauren Coral. in particular. I'm at the faith night there. Just that influence he has, just with the Bible study. His wife has started a Bible study with the wives, that sort of thing, because you have to hit not just on what's on the field, but all the aspects of, you know, in particular, mental health and all that goes with it, right? So there is something to be said about, again, the culture that is here and continues to be here. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Most
Yeah, and that
definitely.
was a huge part of my experience as well. The Bible study group that we had on the team, like huge, and it just takes that relationship level that you have with your teammates to another level. I say the same thing about my college experience too. Like having a Bible study group, or just a group of men who are all looking to grow spiritually, however that tends, comes to come together. Like I think that at the end of the day is extremely helpful, and at the end of the day, you don't want to just show up to do work every day. There has to be a level of satisfaction outside of just what's happening transactionally, what's happening from a business standpoint. So when you can start to kind of marry some of those worlds together, considering how much time you spend in them, I think that goes a really long way. And Lauren was obviously a huge help and a great mentor as well.
That's so good, right? And again, yeah, we need, if anything, we need more people in our lives. We don't need less. And um, again, everybody, for me, I have about 4 people watching my job, but you had 30,000 people watching your job. So there is that thing that definitely plays into it. You guys hosted the first playoff game at IG Field in 2017 versus Edmonton. What was that experience like? I was on the east side, about 9 rows up, but it's quite the experience, and it was quite the cold day. But I'll let you kind of maybe go through what that experience was like for you.
Well, not what you would expect, because in 2017 I was injured and got sent back to school.
Okay.
so, so the whole
Whoops.
experience for me that year, that's okay. It's and that's kind of what I was alluding to a little bit with just sort of how, the dynamics of those couple of years that I had a chance to do the CFL was really impacted because again, and anybody who's kind of been around this knows like it's a very transactional business. So you be on the team one moment and you find yourself off the team just as quickly, depending on where you stand. And so for a guy like myself, who was a later draft pick, you can't afford to get injured. You can't afford to miss time, you know. And so unfortunately, I wasn't there on the back end of the season and didn't have the opportunity to experience it. I was fortunate to be able to be brought back to the team and come back in 2018. But again, like didn't have that opportunity to share that with those guys, watch from afar on that one.
Hmm. Who were some of the main guys that you kind of hung out with during your time in Winnipeg? Some of your close teammates.
Well, who ended up really being, I mean, of course, as a receiver, you spend your time with the receivers, right? So, like Adams and Smith and those guys, like those are guys, Darius Bowman, which really funny small story, but Bowman ended up coming back to the Knoxville area years later when I was working at the University of Tennessee. So, we ended up getting to reconnect a bunch of years after playing, which is cool. But of course, we spent a bunch of time with those guys. Who ended up really being my best friend on the program was actually Johnny Augustine, who still plays on the team. Johnny and I have a pretty cool backstory, but we met when we both played in the East West Bowl in, I guess that would have been 2016, and that's where we originally met. And fast forward some time, he ends up getting brought onto the team in 2018, and we ended up living together. We ended up getting the space together, and yeah, we really just kind of took on most of that, figuring out the CFL experience together, and became a really, really good friend of mine. Just continue to stay in touch with him, but that really ended up being my dog, honestly. Spent probably the most time with him.
Well, it's funny you should say this. I work in the retail business, and again, you start talking to people. He wasn't even my customer, and I met your billet from Winnipeg. He starts talking. He goes, "Yeah, yeah, Johnny and Tyler Henry used to live with me in Winnipeg." I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll check mark that one." I'm like, "Why do these things keep happening? It's insane, but it's so good."
It's insane, man. It's a super small world.
hmm
Hmm.
Yeah, it definitely is. Again, what did you kind of enjoy about Winnipeg outside of the football stadium? Was there a particular hangout spot that you went to? The Forks or whatever,
Hmm.
Wheelies. Just kidding.
Shoot, I don't know if I had one, man. I probably didn't appreciate Winnipeg as well as I could have.
Okay.
I didn't have any like particular thing that we did that was really unique to Winnipeg. I probably took my job a little too serious,
Hmm.
just spent a lot of time just really working on my craft and being excellent at what I was doing. Um, yeah, to be honest, I really probably didn't do enough of it. I know everybody used to talk about like the museum and the forks and a couple different things like that. I never saw them. I never did.
Okay. That's totally fair. That's all good. I mean, if you're devoted to your craft, I mean that's why you're there, right? To play football and that sort of thing. So time after the Bombers, where did kind of life lead you? I know where you are now, but I'll let you kind of get there. But what were the preceding years that followed?
Sure. Um, so following the 2018 season, um, well, the back end of 2018 season, I should say, I started working actively towards pursuing an internship with strength conditioning because I knew that was something that I really wanted to, learn more about and see how it might be a fit for me professionally. I really didn't know what exactly my calling would be when life after football began, but I knew I needed to start making some steps. And so, um, I felt like a strength conditioning coach made sense. It's a healthy blend of things that I really appreciated. As an older college guy, helping the youngsters out on the team, showing them how to be a pro, showing them how to prepare and train, um, prepare their bodies. Like those were things that I gravitated a lot to in the back end of my college career. And so I felt like the mentorship piece of that was something that a strength conditioning coach in college could provide. And of course, being a part of football just only made sense. Doing it in my whole life, naturally something I wanted to be around. And I wanted to do it somewhere that was going to be able to support me in my lifelong pursuit and career. And I really didn't see any of that in Canada where I was. I didn't see anybody doing that job that was making a full time income being a college strength coach as a standalone job. It just wasn't a thing. Um, and so I think looking down south was where I naturally started to turn because of all the resources they had and the legitimate positions and a lot more options when it comes to that field. And so, and truthfully told too, just the success, right? You got to, be able to look at just how much success, obviously, the NCAA football has drawn, nationwide. And so naturally looking there to go, okay, if this is what I'm going to do, it makes only sense to get involved with some organizations that are doing it at a really high level. And so that's kind of how I got started. I emailed, totally cold called probably 50 different programs when I first reached out. And that was when I still played in Winnipeg. So it was probably October of 2018.
Mhm.
I reached out to a lot of people and found out really quickly that nobody wants to read your life story on an email, and they don't want a humongous resume that's 4 pages. Um, but thankfully, some people along the way directed me and kind of helped me to show like, hey, we might not be interested in your services right now, but if this is something that you want to do, this is how you might want to go about it. And so I took that advice and continued to apply it. Um, tried to reapply to all those same places with a new email and a new approach. And lo and behold, I actually got some hits back. And so, um, had the chance to actually make a choice where I wanted to go for an internship. And so I chose Texas Christian University in Texas. Um, and so I went ahead and jumped out there in January of 2019, 36 hours from Edmonton, Alberta, in what I was still driving as my college car. It was a hell of a trip. Little did I know all of the nuances that would, soon to come in terms of immigration, getting across the border, bank accounts, vehicle licensing, you name it. I mean, I had really no idea what I was getting into, but I took a shot. And out of all the stuff that I was trying to figure out, the one thing that worked out really great was I found out I really do love strength conditioning and that this was a field that made a ton of sense and I would be excited to continue to do. Um, and so fast forward when we get back to May of the following year, and now I'm waiting for a re-signing. I'm waiting for the next opportunity, in my football career. And as I'm waiting, I get an opportunity. I get a call to take the next step in my strength conditioning career. And it was an opportunity to take me out to Florida to get my master's degree and continue to progress as a coach. And so I kind of had to sit back and if you would have asked me like what would I have did in that situation probably 2 years prior to that moment, I'd have told you no brainer. I'm going to keep playing football because I'm playing football until I'm 40, right? Um, but at that moment, God really kind of was beginning to help me to see like you're not going to do this forever, and football really don't owe you anything. And so when you get to a point where your body starts to break down, you start to experience different injuries, things that change the way you do things, or maybe just circumstantially, things don't play out. You don't have the same, situation that you might have hoped for. You have to be able to be mature enough to look outside of what you always necessarily thought things was going to be, and be able to make some adjustments accordingly and figure out how God's equipped you and what your tool set allows you to be successful in. And so, we talk about it all the time, but very few people actually think about it until you get to a place where you have to, and that's just real. It was the same for me. I never thought about those things seriously until I got really hurt, until all of a sudden like I realized, wow, I'm a human. I'm not going to be able to just be the way I am all my life. Things change. And so, and certainly being cut from an injury, man, humbling, like just never thought that was going to be me. And so, that's kind of where I got to that decision. And so, yeah, I made the choice to go out and pursue strength conditioning at that point and move forward. And, it really just took me through a whole roller coaster of stops and moves and things. Between that was July of 2019, so only not even a half a year after I'd already moved to Texas. I was moving to Florida, and between July of 2019 and July of 2022, I had moved one, two, three, four, five times, um, and that would have been my fifth school. So West Florida and Pensacola took me to Northern Arizona.
Mhm.
In 2021, Northern Arizona took me to Florida Atlantic, which is South Florida, in 2022, and that spot took me to University of Tennessee in the summer of 2022. Um, so a whole bunch of moving around, a bunch of change. Um, the same car that took me 36 hours to Texas is the same car that took me another like 300 hours of total driving between all those spots. But I found myself at Tennessee in 2022, and that's where I called home for about 4 years. Uh, prior to coming here to Notre Dame just recently, a couple months ago. So it's a little bit about my background and kind of how I've bounced around a little.
Are you gonna be publishing a book anytime soon?
I probably should. Um, Not because I think I'm super important, but because I know that my life has been crazy enough that I think it's worth sharing. I think there's a lot of cool things that I've learned along the way, and a lot of things that I've been taught that I think are worth sharing. And pass it forward. So, but I don't think my story is over with, which is why I think I hesitate a little bit. I think there's still a lot of cool things that are left to be learned, and I'm not convinced that this story is ready to end on a final chapter just yet. I think I got a little more things I'd like to accrue before we decide to ever put that forward.
I would tend to agree. I mean, it's obviously a story, a continuing story of perseverance and reaching those goals. And hey, if it's 36 hours from Edmonton, so be it, right? And all these various stops, and now you're at Notre Dame University, and I can't help but think of, the Brady Quinns and Jeremiah Love. Like you're kind of in the Mecca, and you can't help but think about Rudy. The movie and whatever else. I think that came out the same year you were born, and whatever else. But
You're right.
do you kind of pinch yourself that you're there?
Um, I try now to, well, I shouldn't say I try to. I think I'm at a point now in my career where I've been fortunate to be around enough really high achieving people that I don't freak out anymore, which is good. Because I used to freak out a little, like I'll never forget like being at, I don't know, Florida Atlantic, for example, when Hines Ward was the receivers coach there. I'm like, dang, like I really grew up watching this guy play football and he was the man.
Yeah,
Um, or the first time I met Peyton Manning at Tennessee, and I got to throw a ball with him. I'm like, dude, this is cool. You know, moments like that, Alvin Kamara always coming around. Um, you meet these cats, Eric Berry, these guys who are really high achieving dudes. So at first, like, yeah, it's cool. You get excited about, just you get a little fanboy that comes out. But I think it's a lot like, being in the CFL. When you first enter the stage, there's a level of like appreciation for the level of achievement that you're around because it is cool. But you also have to be able to check yourself. And you have to also be able to kind of keep that at bay because if you fall into the fanboy category, very hard to be held as a professional or of equal status when you're too busy gawking about how great the people are who are around you, right?
right.
And so, kind of had to learn that as my career has gone on. Now I've gotten to a place where I certainly appreciate how great some of these people are who've been able to share some space with, but. I really just stay focused now on the mission, and the mission is like, I'm here to help young men get better. So whether you're a 22-year-old 8 millionaire or you're a walk on, it's the same mission. And that's one of those deals that you just approach everybody the same way, and then you go back home and you appreciate how cool it really is.
Most definitely, right? And yeah, I can tell you that. Yeah, I remember. Well, Peyton Manning when he was in Winnipeg, I was at the press conference. I asked him a question. I was 30 years old at the time. It's like, hey, he's actually answering my questions. So, but years of doing this too, I've kind of like, nope, these guys actually have great stories, and football is just what they've done or whatever, right? And so they're just guys passing it forward. So I got to ask you, mentors, role models, and where do you see yourself in 5 years? I know those three questions, but
Sure. Well, mentor, role model. I'd say the same. I fit those up the same way. I think people that have really influenced me, uh, that I continue to look up to. Probably one of the first people I ever looked up to that really set the tone for me was Kamal Peterson, former CFL, NFL, and
okay.
more impactfully, the owner of a private business called Playmaker U when I was still a teenager. And Playmaker U was a private training facility that he ran, that he trained people in, and me and a handful of select guys were fortunate enough to train under him for some years. And, I really got to work with him between when I left high school through really primarily as a freshman in college. So 2 years and some change. And I mean, it made all the difference. For me, it was seeing another accomplished black man who turned his athletic pursuit into excellence in business and always having a heart for giving back and really for being the type of dude that he might have needed himself coming up along the way. And I always really admired that. I thought, KP was probably one of the biggest role models I have when I was a teenager and coming through college. So he's definitely top of the list for me. And then I think in terms of like other people that have really set the trajectory for me. I've never met him, but man, reading Ray Lewis's book and listening to a lot of his material online, that was another dude who really impacted me. I never really started reading books until I really got into college. Never would have caught me dead with a book. I thought that was for nerds. But it ended up being a big part of my walk, being influenced by other people's ways of thinking and growing. And Ray's story, the background with his mom and how, it pushed him and motivated him to become who he did. A lot of the same challenges that were my home dynamics as well. I share a lot of those things. And so for me, like being able to see that there was another person in the world who walk around with the same chip on their shoulder that I had and was still successful, man, that's really all I needed to see. And I feel like that's really all young people want. You want somebody who can show you what it looks like to do right, but you also want somebody who's in touch with reality, and that's really important. It's one thing to tell you what's right, but have no clue what it looks like from Beverly Hills. You know what I'm saying? But like to really have a close association with some of the things that someone's dealing with, that's a whole nother level of respect for a young person. And I think that like for me, a guy who I've never even met really became like a very high figure for me in terms of just motivation and self belief. That knowing that like, hey, you know what, like I'm going through some stuff, but like I've got what it takes to get through this thing. Because if he could do something like that, I could too. And I think that's a lot of the reason that what you said earlier might have been a joke, but I do mean it. Like I would love to write a book one day because in a lot of the same ways, I want to be able to impact somebody the same way that impacted me. And if someone hearing my story, whether it's from how my home dynamics were up until some of the perseverance that I might have had to go through career wise, dealing with injuries, whatever it might be, like that's something that I want to be able to pass forward as well.
Because the reality is that in 10 years, say you come out with a book, somebody's going to read that and say, well, this guy played for the Bombers for a brief stint, so it gives them that connection point, or was strength and conditioning coach at Notre Dame University, or these sorts of things. And yeah, you're going to have that impact, right? Because again, it's about kind of paying it forward, legacy, etc. Right? So, I mean, you get it. I'm telling you stuff that you already know, but that's so important because it's more than just a football. And I had a guy on the other day, and he talked about ecosystems. Like he's personal friends with Tony Dungy, and he's like, it's wild. Like he's,
Cool.
oh yeah, and it's again these people you've met along the way, right? Like, um, you've created your own ecosystem, Tyler. I'm convinced.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's absolutely true. There's I really do believe that no giant stands on flat ground. You're on the shoulders of many, and that's really what makes anybody successful. I really don't agree with the concept of a self-made man, which is ironic because I called myself that for a very long time. You know,
Hmm.
um, I started training when I was 14.
Right.
I started trying to build myself. And, I created a lot of success early in my athletics career because of my work ethic and because I was willing to do the stuff that a lot of people weren't willing to do at a young age. So I started to convince myself that I've created this own reality for myself. Everything that I do is self driven, everything that I do is a byproduct of my own behavior. And I convinced myself that over so many years that it was really hard to unteach myself that when I got older and started to see big picture. And even though I could take credit and say that at the end of the day, what I'm willing to do is still a huge driver in where my life takes me,
Right.
uh, man, being able to be humble enough to understand that, like, man, you might work your tail off, but until you're willing to receive some counsel, until you're willing to
Hmm.
be helped by somebody, until you're willing to honestly not just look in the mirror, but look around. And you have to be willing to do that. And I think a lot of times, like people take everything to the extreme. People think either they have to be hyper concerned about what everybody thinks, or they have to worry about what nobody thinks and just run their own race, which
Right.
both of them sound good applied to the right situation. But I think both are in an extreme. If we're talking about extremes, man, we're not talking about reality, because you can't just stay in your lane and expect to get where you want to go. How do you expect to answer all of life's problems with your perspective? Who are you?
Right.
Who are you to be able to figure all of that out? Who are you to know the
Yeah.
best way to go about something by yourself?
Yeah.
And that's just, again, like that's just something that I had to come to realize. Not to put on the shelf working hard, not to put on the shelf like doing what it takes, getting up early, doing the extra. All that stuff is good, but
Mhm.
just being humble enough to say, "Hey, we stand on the shoulders of giants, man." Like until you're willing to take some people along the way, and receive them for what they can offer to you, and being willing to do that and pass that along, man, you're gonna stall out.
Well, and that brings me back to when you mentioned about the Bible studies with the Bombers, how that was pivotal in your development in your life, right? So, um, again, cornerstones, pillars, that sort of thing, that all plays a role, right? And you create those relationships for life, like with Johnny Augustine, for
Mm-hmm.
example, right? So that that
Yeah.
that's a big deal, no doubt. No question about it. So it's good. It's good. It's awesome. Was there anything else you'd like to cover? Something I haven't covered that you would like to say before we head off here?
Hmm. Final thoughts. Um. Yeah. I guess let's circle up on that last point just a little bit further. Um. Because I think the thing that I get a lot of times when people ask me about what I've learned along the way and what it's taken to be able to have some of the success that I've been able to enjoy. And I think a lot of times, like because of the way I operated early in my career, people always just assume that I'm the same dude. That like the hard work, the do the extra, run your own race mentality is how I've continued to move. But the truth is that like I've had to be humbled in ways that I never saw coming.
Hmm.
Um, I've had to get humbled to the point where I've had to almost like refine self confidence, because you know the like life has taken me all the way down to the point where it's like just when you think you can work your way through every scenario, just when you think you can fight and claw your way into everything you want, you learn that it runs its course, and you cannot constantly just outwork. Um, you can't just constantly outwork situations, or work through every single thing. Um, you know, like I found faith when I was 20. That's late. I mean, shoot, I didn't grow up in a Christian household. I didn't have any context about what any of that stuff might look like. But when I say that, man, having faith is what truly gave me the horsepower that I needed to be able to transform the way that I've been able to and be adaptable enough to continue to be successful in a lot of different domains. Man, like it is the truth. And I think everybody wants to get hung up on like who you call Lord, what's your specific religion, what are you practicing, all these things. Like everybody wants to hang up on all these things.
Yeah.
Look, here's what I'm saying. I got my beliefs, but I'll just say this: like, you can tell when somebody truly understands faith in their life when you see the consistency in how they behave when things are uncertain. That tells you when somebody has real faith. You will find out very, very quickly how truly orientated somebody is to faith when you watch them go through different seasons and you see the uncertainties come through. And I'm not saying that like I've got all that figured out, by the way.
Yep.
I'm just saying that, man, like when you really go through some ups and downs, you go through humbling seasons, you go through peaks and valleys, like when you are able to go through those things and still keep your head above ground, be adaptable enough to take the lessons along the way, receive things as they need to be, and then continue to keep pushing forward and never to lose your aim, never lose your sight. Don't drop your confidence. I'll show you somebody who's got great faith. And, I think there's somebody probably going to listen to this who's probably wired a lot like me. If somebody spent the time to listen to all this conversation,
Yeah.
they're probably fairly achievement orientated. So I say, like, man, for anybody who thinks that way, that would just be like my challenge to you is are you really somebody who's able to not only be a hard worker, but have the type of faith and confidence to know that even when things don't always look up, that you can still look up, that you can still keep your head focused on where you need to be looking, and to have good faith and trust along the way, knowing that like you're gonna get where you're supposed to go. Um, and I think that's probably something that I would like to share with people because again, everybody sees the highlights, they see the stat lines, just like in sports, and they think that everything's always been a linear, smooth, transitional deal. No, sir, no.
Yeah, there's I always hate to quote songs, but stars and scars and struggles along the way. There is a song out there, and but that's what creates the perseverance, and that's what makes you the person you are, and it is part of your story, and that's what's part of everyone's story, and there's no shame in that at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it needs to be celebrated. Absolutely. So I got you on because you play for the Bombers, but there's this whole other aspect. Like when you said you found faith in when you were 20, I mean, not doing quick math on that. I mean, that's significant, right? So, that's big. Because the stats don't lie. If you don't find faith by 18, you're not going to find it generally. So that's awesome.
Hmm. Yeah, man, I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge, and that is, that's part of your story, and that's so good. It's good. It's awesome. Um, I know you say you gotta be somewhere in a bit here, but as I say, this has been so good, Tyler. Again, I'll have you on some other time too. But all the best in at Notre Dame University there, and go Irish.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for having me, Steve. All the best. Look forward to talking with you again soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Take care. God
All
bless.
right.